Hello, Brick Sculptors, and welcome back to Brick Sculpt. This is Chris, and today we're going to be talking about hinges and turntables. So I've got a lot of examples laid out here on this board, and I got some old ones, I got some new ones, I got a little bit of everything. Keep in mind, this is not every piece that Lego makes that will bend or twist, but it's a good large selection of them, and I think I can make a lot of good points with these examples here. I'm also going to note I'm not going to make a deep dive into Technic. I have a few examples here, but that is a completely other world. I could do an entire video just on Technic, although I'm not the biggest Technic builder. If you watch my content, you know it's not really my forte, but I'm just going to do a few quick examples of Technic, and then we're going to leave Technic aside. That being said, I have so many examples here. I'm going to touch on all these fairly briefly. In the future, I'm going to do more in-depth videos on specific parts that you see on this board in my pieces series. But I want to kind of go through the entire thing here. If you see something in here that you have questions about, feel free to let me know below. And if there's a piece in here that you really want to see a full video on, let me know below. I'll do my best to see if I can do that. Let's go ahead and get started because this video might get long. Starting over here, we have some more classic hinge pieces. And some of this jointery has been replaced. Some of it is still relevant. I do believe they still use these pieces today, where you have kind of the finger joints. You have one side that fits inside the other, and it twists just like that. These are most commonly used for Lego vehicle roofs and doors, but it is a hinge piece you can use for lots of different things. For example, this one here has a sunroof in it, but this one here is more just a panel to cover a window, like a shutter type deal. A lot of different stuff you can do with this. These two different fingerboards have different purposes. This one here is going to sit flush to the top and basically make it a 4x5 long plate with a hinge. And this one here is going to tuck underneath, keeping it 4x4, but having that piece underneath there so it opens up and closes flush. A similar technique to this can be done with our trapdoor piece. Probably not the most useful hinge outside of a trapdoor, but I don't know, get creative. You could probably find something cool to do with that. Over here we have these hinges that have what I like to call kind of finger joints. They make ones like this that have 3 and then ones that have 2. These are probably the most basic types in this family. They're going to fit together just like this and have movement. To the best of my knowledge, they do not use these anymore. They've been retired. The little fingers do tend to crack and break with age. So they've kind of gone away from this method. I wish they wouldn't have. I wish they would have just improved on it. And I'll show you over here what they've kind of replaced it with. But these are great detail pieces, especially in white for like handrails. You can do some really cool angles with these. And I think it's a really, really, really good piece, even though it is an older piece. They did expand this into kind of the bar line, where you have some of these longer bars that have a stud on there. These were good for like masts and sails and things like that, but kind of unique. This piece, you guys probably all know, has been used for all kinds of things in Lego, from razors to boat props, but that is where that originated from. It's designed to clip into one of these. They also have one that has a 2-prong side and a 3-prong side, and they have a 3-prong that's kind of short and stubby. This one's interesting too. This is a bar that has an angle on it, has a 2-prong side and a 3-prong side, so you can connect on both sides of that as well. So a really good series of parts. Kind of sad that it's no longer current, but I do think these were really great pieces and have a ton of uses. Probably one of, if not the most useful hinges on this entire board are these 4 right here. And they're actually pretty old pieces. These pieces have stood the test of time, and for good reason. The classic 2x2s with a hinge. This piece has been around for quite a long time, and it is still current and still super relevant. I should mention, when we're talking hinges, there's kind of two different axes you can rotate these on. You can basically rotate them swinging like a door would, or pivoting overhead like this. So a couple different axes, and there's all kinds of examples for both here. As far as this hinge piece, they also make a thick version of it. In my opinion, a lot less useful, but it still can be useful. I would much rather work with these. It's easier to pack a detail in using a thinner plate, and you can even stack multiple of these to make for a tighter joint, but those aren't bad pieces. In this kind of overhead pivot version, they do have a 1x2 top version and then a 2x2 top version. One of the nice things about the 2x2 is you can pop this off and spin it around and have the overhang on the other side and still use the hinge. Really a great piece. And like I said, these four older pieces, but super current and relevant today. Here's a few that are kind of outdated. You don't see these too much anymore. I think most of them are retired, if not all of them. But they do have kind of a larger version of this. Applications I've seen this in have mostly been for trucks that have a hinge in the middle, like a construction vehicle that needs to turn a tighter radius. And this basically goes from 90 degree to 90 degree on the other side. And then you have these kind of butterfly pieces that open up like this. And this piece mostly seen for like a dump truck. Something you put a bucket on and then you can raise and dump it. They have a long version with an 8 long base. And then they have a shorter version with just a 4 long base. This is another interesting one. It's very similar to what I just showed you with this one, but it's kind of free floating. It doesn't really lock into place, and it also doesn't fully close in this direction. I believe you can spin this around, and make it flush that way. But very interesting piece there, and I don't know if they still use this. I don't think they do, but that's just kind of a cool older hinge piece. Getting a little bit off topic here, but I think it is still relevant. Magnets. Magnets can pivot. Some of them rotate depending on the piece. If you're looking at like this one here, this one rotates. And magnets are super cool. You don't see them too much in Lego anymore, but once upon a time they were pretty prevalent, and I think can allow for some really cool techniques there. Oh, by the way, I put this up here just to tease you guys. I know you all love this piece and you wish it was a hinge, so you know what? We're going to let it hang out with the hinges today. Okay, over here we have our kind of robotic arm pieces. I'm pretty sure they don't use these anymore, but they might. I'm not 100% on that. The robotic arm pieces were super cool. They're used for a lot of sci-fi and space stuff. They were used on submarines and things, and they're just basically hinged with these little segments. And what I gathered here, there's several different kinds of segments. You have 2 of them that will attach to Technic pieces, and then you'll have a 3-prong and a 2-prong, and that'll determine what you can connect off of there. You also have just kind of the standard piece, which goes from 2 to 3, and this allows you to stack a whole bunch of them in a row. So you can just keep going with them, and they're going to pivot on this axis here. You then have some that are a 2-prong and a 3-prong, but they're rotated 90 degrees. And what that's going to do is going to change direction. So these ones will pivot this way, but these ones are going to pivot the opposite once you add another piece. So you're changing the direction of the bend, which is kind of cool. One final piece here, which is a really interesting one, is this guy. And this one here is a ball and socket piece. So I couldn't find them. I do own them for like submarines, but there's a little ball with a clip on it that fits in there, and you can use it for grabbing things. But I did find some other pieces that fit. This Technic piece with the ball will pop right in there. Also, this newer piece here where it's just a bar piece with a ball fits on there, so you could attach a lot of different stuff on there. And, getting ahead of myself here, but these little toe hooks will fit too. So, pretty cool piece. They do make some connectors that are just built right into brick. This one here has a 2-prong, and this one also has a 2-prong, but this one rotates, and this is a really old school piece. Something you don't see a lot anymore. I think this is from old space stuff, but I might be wrong. I have so many different generations of Lego in my collection that it's all kind of blended old and new, and sometimes I don't really know where the stuff comes from. It just shows up in the collection. Anyway, moving on. These are kind of our newer hinge pieces, and this piece I'm pretty certain is what was designed to replace these ones here. It's supposed to be a little less fragile, but I would kind of argue that's not always the case. Though I think these do have a good hold, and I don't think they're going to snap like these ones did. These do wear over time. If you ever use these hard, especially a kid using it as a play feature, which most of these are for that, these little teeth do wear out, and they do lose their strength. So you have to be a little careful with that. These are really cool because they usually stop at a 90-degree angle, which means this will double as a snot piece, and it will get you those studs not on top if you're connecting this on a wall or something. And they kind of have that 90-degree either direction and then small increments all the way throughout, and it locks really nicely in place. There's several different versions of it. These are 1x2s with these ratchet mechanisms on them. They make the same piece, but it goes side to side, not up and down. So it's got the opposite motion, which is kind of cool. They make a thin version where it's just on a 1x2. Sorry, I put a plate under here so it would stand up off the base plate. And then they make a short and wide version too. It's a 1x2 turned sideways. They make this version here. These are typically, from my experience, used for attaching windshields on like airplanes, but it will attach any of these ratchet pieces on there as long as you're using the 2-prong side. And then they have ones that are double-sided. We have 2 prongs on one side and then the opposite 1 prong on the other. And they have that in a 2-stud long, 4-stud, 6-stud. There might be longer. These are the only ones I have. So those are pretty cool as well. They have some of these that are kind of flush. So this one pops up from a plate and makes for a really nice hinge for doors and things. This one's flat on top. I believe that is so you can take one of these thin ones, and have it close flush, which is kind of cool. And then here's a 2x2 with it popping up. I don't really know what that would be used for. I'm sure you could find some cool stuff, but a piece I've never really used. They do some round versions of these as well. This one here demonstrates how this could come off of a Technic hole. So it's got a Technic pin in it. It would come out from the brick, and then you could attach whatever you want on here. And I mentioned that these kind of replaced these pieces over here with the fingers, but it also kind of replaced the robot arm piece too, because you can link a lot of these together and really make whatever you want with them in a robot arm fashion. So it kind of replaced a lot of this stuff. And I do think these are great pieces. I don't use them a ton, but honestly I don't use a ton of hinges just in general. If you've seen my builds, I usually try to find workarounds away from hinges, just something I do naturally. I don't know why. But there is a lot of useful stuff here and a lot of great techniques to be found. This one here is the same piece as the last one. I'm just showing how it will fit on the other side. So you can attach something Technic to this by having this face outward, which is pretty cool. And then they have these that will hold a Technic axle. This will also hold a bar piece. They have one where it's a 1 prong there, and then they also have it where it's a 2 prong coming off of there. So you have both versions of that. Very useful pieces. These are cool for like putting an antenna or an axle or a bar at an angle and making it come out. So really cool stuff you can do with that piece. And then there's these. I've never found a ton of uses for them. This piece I first saw in the early 2000s. I'm a big Star Wars nut. I don't collect Star Wars Lego anymore per se, but back in the day when it first came out, I bought every set. Actually, I should say my parents bought every set for me for gifts, for holidays. And the first time I saw this piece, they were yellow and they were on Anakin's pod racer. And that might not be the first appearance of it, but that's where I first saw it. And ever since, that's all I can think of when I see these pieces. I have used these on a SpaceX Falcon 9 for landing legs because they work really well for that. But other than that, I really don't know what that piece is supposed to be. It's definitely very sci-fi-esque, very spaceship-esque. And if you watch my stuff, you know that's not typically what I build. Going back to the robotic arm thing, they also do like a tow hitch here. These were often used in play features for like bulldozers, front end loaders, stuff like that, tow trucks. So that's where you get things like that coming from. And they do a fat version too, a 2x2 with both 2-prong and 1-prong. Now going through the evolution here, some people might argue that this piece was replaced by the ball and socket. And I think there is some truth to that in some applications. The ball and socket is incredibly versatile because instead of having that indexing clicking mechanism where it will kind of tell you where it has to go, the ball and socket can go anywhere as long as it's within its range. So you can go side to side, you can go up and down, a lot of stuff you can do with the ball and socket, and really, really useful piece. They do also make these where they're double-sided. Again, playing into kind of that mechanical arm thing. You can do that with these. And they do make short, stubby ones as well. I used these in my hexagon obelisk, and I think these would be very handy in obelisks in general in the future. I know I can't do a video without mentioning an obelisk. But we should note that these aren't necessarily completely new. These here are some super old school ones, and these were generally just tow hitches. They were designed for trailers. You'd put this piece on the back of a truck and this piece on a trailer, and you have a connection there. But this really isn't too much different than what they're doing today. So kind of cool. And there are several variations. Most people have seen this one and maybe this one, but these are a little less common. But there are other variations. There's a lot of cool uses you can do with these. The connection's not as solid as it is with these because it's designed to kind of move freely because it is typically a trailer hitch, and you want free movement of that vehicle, where these are a little bit more snug in the ball and socket. But you could use this to make some cool joinery if you really wanted to. And I'm sure there's some cool applications out there for this. Another ball and socket, pretty obvious one. These guys here. Now, I've never really used this piece. I got this in a bulk buy. I have a few of them. I could think of some applications for it. I've just never had a time I've really needed it. But really cool. Just the whole design of this is awesome. And there's some cool connections you can do on here. But yeah, that's got a ton of different movement and a lot of different applications you can do with that there. I will briefly touch on some Technic stuff. Like I said, I could do a whole video just on Technic, although Technic's not really my thing. But obviously you have rotation anytime you connect two Technic holes. As you probably know, there's different kinds of Technic pins. So like the gray ones here move very freely. The black ones are designed to stick. But obviously infinite angles you can do with Technic and something like this. And of course you have Technic axles and things like that, which will also give you full rotation. Lots of cool different Technic pieces that you can do all kinds of different angles with. And if you want to move this on a different axis, you can also always use snot technique, and you can rotate this way as well as this way. So that's enough about Technic. Again, that could be a whole separate video, so we're just going to leave that alone. All right. Now my favorite, and what I would argue is the most useful way to do hinges, is going to be bars and clips. I like this because it's small detail. Most of the stuff I've shown you thus far is kind of larger, chunkier parts. These are little, and there is a lot of them. Over here we have clips, and there's tons of different ones, everything from just a standard clip, smaller versions, overhead, forward facing, rotated, doubles stacked on top of each other, droid arms, both this version and the bent version. One of my favorite applications of this, if you do any like the Lego City planes, they use these for the door hinges on the planes, which is really cool. You have bar holder clips, like this. And you can obviously stick a bar in there, which is pretty cool. And then here we have all of our bars. Now a bar doesn't just refer to this, although that is a bar. And I have various different lengths here. But it can refer to anything that holds a bar, even something this small, or even our favorite bottle topper piece, as you can see here with the droid arms. A lot of different things you can connect, and if you mix and match this whole group with this whole group, there are so many awesome connections you can do with both of these. I might make a separate video just on that, or maybe covering just my favorites of these and showing some cool connections. But if you ever want to get better with hinge work, I would highly recommend buy as many clips and bars as possible and just start tinkering with them, because there's so many cool things you can come up with playing with all these pieces here. And honestly, with just clips and bars, you can replace probably 90+% of what you see out here with just these small detail pieces. So that's pretty cool, I think. Last but not least, I want to briefly touch on turntables. Because turntables can also make for angles, just like a lot of these pieces here. Here we have kind of the old school large chunky turntable. Nowadays they've gone to kind of this design here, where it's one separate piece that's a 4x4 with this circle that has kind of this textured ridge on the outside. And you can take something like this, snap it down on it, and spin it. This is a little bit shorter than this, which is kind of cool. And it's two separate pieces that are just compatible together, so you can also use them separately. This, if you take it apart, is kind of useless. Here we have the standard turntable, which is still relevant in use today. And I've recently picked up this piece here, and I'm not totally sure what it's all about yet. I do know you can take a plate or maybe a brick and snap it on there. It is a very tight fit. It almost feels illegal. So tell me if I'm doing something wrong here. It fits super tight, and you turn it, it doesn't really turn freely, which could be good. If you're doing something structural with this where you want it to be at an angle, this would be really good because it holds really, really tight, where this just has a mind of its own. It spins freely. This you can really lock in at whatever angle you want, but it is really tight fitting. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that. Maybe I'm using it wrong. Again, I'm totally new to this piece, but that is a newer version of this, although this is still a relevant piece. It hasn't really replaced it, just kind of a newer take on it. And I have to mention propellers, because any of these would as well work as a large turntable. This is a cool 5x5 cross. And they have different connections on the bottom. This is one just on a plate. This one's built into a brick. And I don't know if you guys know this, but this is kind of the old version of it, where it actually has like a pin and then a hole in the middle. And for a propeller, I like this better, but this piece seems super useful. You know, they make that kind of 3x3 cross piece. This is a 5x5. And it, on the bottom, would connect just fine. This is just one plate higher in the middle. You could really make something structurally cool out of this piece, although it's an old retired piece. It's probably hard to find. I had to search hard through my Lego to find that one, because everything I have looks like this. But this one, once you disassemble it, the bottom's basically useless. There's not a lot you can do with that. But this could be a good structural piece as that cross in the middle. Well, I hope you guys found this video useful. I covered a lot of different stuff here. If you have any questions, please leave it below. If there's any pieces in here that you want to know more about, please let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to make some individual piece videos, or maybe just individual family videos based off of this video, because there is just so much content here. And again, I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch. There's a lot of different hinge pieces out there and a lot of different ways you can make rotation and angles with Lego. So hope you guys like this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm going to do more just like this in the future, and we will see you next time.